I think of myself more as a song and dance man, you know.
The only reason that we are still together is that the subtlety of delicate change in the music is, you know, the thing that keeps us together. And so people come along now and they come to see the changes.
Some of it's old, some of it's new, something borrowed, something brown.
It's funny how many times rock and roll's been dead. Yeah, how many times people have said it's been dead. It just keeps coming back like a bloody phoenix.
Rock and roll! All right, folks, now I'd like to welcome back to the show author and rock and roll historian Derek Shelmerdine. Thank you for your monthly contributions to the show, Derek.
Oh, my pleasure, John. I really enjoy our conversations. Do you know, almost all the stories about the bands and artists are taken from my book, Rock and Roll Unravelled.
Well, tell us more about the book, Derek.
Well, Rock and Roll Unravelled looks at the history of rock and roll from its roots with the likes of Robert Johnson to the mid-70s punk era. Not just the music, but also the social events which helped to shape it. Stuff like the Vietnam War, the civil rights struggle. But the book itself has a unique design. It's set out in 3 parts. What Happened Today looks at the main events on a day-by-day basis, 1st of January through 31st of December. Things like landmark events for artists and bands, gigs, recording sessions, singles and albums, plagiarism, failed auditions, landmark TV shows and movies, and a whole load more. In fact, Record Collector magazine loved the book, and in their review, they suggested that Shelmerdine has made a painstaking effort to document pretty much every event that would prove significant in shaping popular music. And for anybody who hasn't come across Record Collector, it's the UK equivalent of the American Goldmine magazine. It's very much aimed at record collectors and people who want to get into the nitty-gritty of music. And in fact, in their review, Record Collector went on to say, Shelmerdine has produced a comprehensive guide that'll prove invaluable to anybody with an unhealthy interest in music's minutiae. And they finished the quote by saying, well, that'll be the Record Collector reader then. I was really pleased with that interview. It was brilliant. All of the stories are in that What Happened Today section, but the book makes the really powerful because it also has 2 other sections which comprehensively cross-references the stories. The timeline takes all of the items in What Happened Today and puts them into a chronological order, and this gives context to all the stories. What's great about the timeline is that you can see what else was happening at the time of a particular event. You can see genres and careers ebbing and flowing. All that plus a 3rd section, which I've called Pocket Histories. Once again, this cross-references the stories to build a history of the artists and bands, plus the social events such as the Vietnam War and the civil rights struggle. I've also built into Pocket Histories additional information. So there's stuff in there that's over and above what's in the day-to-day pages of What Happened Today. For instance, for major bands like the Beatles, Stones, Floyd, Zeppelin, Doors, I've included a brief intro showing how the bands came together. Also, when there's a lineup for a classic recording or gig, I've added information about where the musicians came from or went to. I mean, basically, I've written a book I always wanted to buy, but it didn't exist. A comprehensive rock and roll guide with all the information between 2 covers.
Yeah, and it's filled with a ton of research. It looks like you spent years and years and years putting this all together. I'm quite impressed with the amount of information and how easy it is to access.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, John. I spent something like 7 years, probably more, researching and writing the book. I mean, it's heavily cross-referenced because I was aiming to get, as much accuracy as I could into the finished product.
And who were your target audience? Who were you aiming the book at?
Well, really, it's just about anybody who's interested in music, really. And the music today has its roots in the 80s and 90s music, and those guys were influenced by the 60s and 70s bands, who in turn took their inspiration from the rock and roll of the 50s and the blues and R&B of the 30s and 40s. And what's really good is, you and I chat to people who've bought the book. They tell me when they read it, it brings back the memories of those times, which is great, really.
And where can you buy the book, Rock and Roll Unravelled?
Well, it's available on Amazon and lots of other internet sales outlets around the world. It's stocked in some bookshops in the UK, but it can be ordered in any bookshop in the UK.
And for more information, why don't you tell us about your website, your Facebook, and your Twitter activities?
Yeah, I'm really active on those fronts. The website itself is rockandrollunraveled.com. There's lots of information there. Well, not just about the book, but all kinds of stuff on there. And the Twitter and Facebook's a very active time for me as well. On Twitter, you can find me at RNR Unravelled, and for Facebook, I'm at Rock and Roll Unravelled, and they're obviously all one word. But it'd be great to hook up over those.
Well, Derek, thank you so much for the information about your book. I really appreciate it. We'll talk again next month, right?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks a lot, John. Cheers, mate. Bye.